morning. Hello, hello. Yes, yes. Hi. I've got my glasses on. Yes, hello and welcome. I better do housekeeping first. I'm wearing AirPods because I'm partially deaf. They're hearing aids for me, so I can hear what people are saying. I'm not playing jazz in the background. Oh, well, maybe I am. Welcome to White Days. Again, thanks to Olaf, Michael and Kit and the rest of the team for having me do this really difficult job. I find moderating really difficult, but I said yes anyway. Briefly about me, I am this guy. I am an artist manager with many years of taking artists into international markets, releasing music and touring. I quit touring in 2022. If anybody would like to be a tour manager, see me at the end and I'll try and talk you out of it. Relevant to the panel, I also used to co-own a live venue in London. If anybody would like to open a live venue, please see me at the end. Right, we're going to do questions. We're not doing the thing where we've got time for one question. We're going to stop, hopefully about in 45 minutes and do many questions. So start thinking of your questions now. As I introduce, no, you guys can do it yourself. You're all adults. Please state your name and just say what you want to say in maybe 60 seconds.
Okay, this is me drinking whiskey. Yeah, thanks to Olaf and the French last August. Great whiskey tasting. So my name is Cesar. I come from Madrid, born and raised Spanish, but I'm a total internationalist. I lived overseas for 10 years in New Zealand and Australia, so I'm well-traveled. So I think I'm perfect for this panel. I have many experiences around the globe. I've been in the music business for 38 years, so that's sad because I'm quite old now. But yeah, I booked some tours since the mid-'80s with fax and phone. Incredible. And you receive those contracts after 2 days, you couldn't even read them. So anyway, I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks for having me. I love Edinburgh, Scotland. Yeah, great to see you. Hopefully it's going to be fun.
Next.
Hello, dear friends from Edinburgh, Scotland, and other places. My name is Fruzsina Szep, and I'm born Hungarian. I was born in Budapest, but I grew up also in some places around this planet. But and I call myself also. I feel more European than only Hungarian. I work in Germany. I'm the festival director of 2 festivals. One is called Lollapalooza in Berlin, and the other one is Superbloom in Munich. Both festivals are taking place in Olympic parks, because Germany has 2 Olympic parks, and capacity Lolla around 50,000, and Superbloom we reached 60,000 last year. I'm a board member of Europe, the European Festival Association, and I'm still in love with music, and I'm in this industry. Next year it will be 30 years, and I was also working with fax, dear Cesar, and some pigeon post maybe as well. But yeah, the good old days and the great days also today. I love to work in the live industry, and as I said, I'm still a music lover, and I also know that it's always about the people. So it's the people that matter in a team, on stage, behind the stage. So that gives me still very positive energies, that I'm still very, very happy to work in this industry, and I feel lucky because it's beside all the many times the stress and the hard work, it's also about fun and creating dreams and emotions for many, many people out there who need that in their life. And I'm very happy to be here, and I hope we can share a nice hour together.
Hello, my name is Klara. I work for Beggars Group and the 5 labels that encapsulates. I work mainly on the marketing side. You're making me feel very junior because I do not work with fax. Started in the time of Zoom calls, which has made the international aspect of my job a lot easier. Started at Beggars in London and did my own little Brexit and got moved to Paris about 2 years ago, focusing on the global side of things. So a lot of Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Europe in general. And also very, very happy to be working with marketing in this concept and not just be selling and working more on the consumer side, but getting to work with music is really, really nice.
How lucky we are. Oh, by the way, thanks to White Days for agreeing my request, Olaf, to change the colour of your design this year to match my socks. It's very cool. And your sock. Right. Cultural, I'm reading. This is going to be chaos, right? I've tried for 2 days to find a structure. I can't find one. It's just going to be messy. Life is messy. That's okay. But it will be on me. If it's a mess, it's on me. These guys had nothing to do with this. Professionals.
We like mess.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So, but I have got a sentence that I can read that I did that's not chaotic. So, cultural and business norms can vary greatly, even within the same country. This panel is for anyone who's about to export themselves or someone else through releasing music, touring, or promoting their art through social media. Right, I've told myself to start with number 4, so I shall do that and turn the page. I bought this, by the way, £7 from £7. That's a gig I wish I got into for a bloody clipboard. Right, number 4. So, I'm fascinated by how little we know about each other, given we've got the internet now for 25 years or so. And I think about even just being Scottish, where I lived in London for a long time and I still go back a lot. And I'm still seen as being a little bit exotic down there, which I think is mental. And still people, when they make jokes about Scottish culture, it's train spotting and Braveheart and that we're drunk. Like, we know so little about each other. And that's interesting to me. And I've been to Poland 4 or 5 times, and I think what I know about Poland is the men are hard-working manual labourers and they've got pierogi. It's mad how little we're able to retain about the cultural nuances that we all don't share. But it's also useful to us. I think about, so Olaf and the whiskey tasting, the things we know about Scotland, and there are many, but they're probably just golf and castles and maybe Harry Potter, I don't know. But whiskey's a big thing here, and people come for whiskey. And I've got another life that's partly in Norway, and when I'm in Norway, my friends there really want to come to Scotland. I'm saying, why would you want to come here? Like, you've got, the mountains are 3 times bigger in Norway, but you've got the whiskey and it's cheaper, so little things. But you can use these things to your advantage. You can entice people with your cultural idiosyncrasies, because we all fetishize, whether we want to use that word or not, we all fetishize cultures in different ways for different reasons. I think about how I just think Japan's cool. What am I basing that on? I just think it's cool, but I know so little about it despite having been there a number of times. So how do I jump off from that into a question from the panel? You're wondering, I don't know. So guys, what are your thoughts on that? Would you agree? Do you feel like there's despite there being wonderfully now a great more mixing of cultures globally, do you still feel like our nations retain a sense of cultural identity? And if you do agree with that, how could you think about using that as a way to work positively with other markets? So I brought it back to the music industries right at the end. Klara, we'll go with you first. Come on.
I think it was really interesting post-Brexit. I grew up in Sweden, and having worked to start with Beggars, very UK-focused in the main office in London, I was talking to friends back home, and you started seeing that there was a different focus on national acts post-Brexit and during Brexit. I think it was very much depending on, will they be able to tour? What can we focus on in that sense? And I think seeing places like France, when you're trying to get your music on radio, they have, you know, radio quotas where certain music needs to be in French, and they need to have, tends to be 40 to 50% of their music that they play needs to be in French. So you see a lot of artists trying to collaborate with French artists based on that and release music in French. And I think, you know, there is this pride of your own music, and really trying to put that forward. And I think it's what makes it also beautiful, because, you know, a lot of music business has been and still is to a certain degree very, very UK focused and US focused, because of English being such an international language. And I think it's really nice to see that. I feel like it's growing a lot more and more, and people are starting to appreciate music in other languages. We're seeing obviously Irish growing a lot, and being Swedish, I see a lot of Swedish artists growing internationally as well, and that's really cool.
Yeah, and we're seeing in the I'm going to say the phrase the pop charts, to show my age, the huge growth of Spanish language music. But perhaps you can talk about that, and also my first point, which is I can't remember now. How do you feel about just the cultural differences that we still retain, and how useful they are when you're exporting yourself?
Well, being Spanish, I mean, I'll go talk about music later, but being Spanish is a fun thing, and also it's a funny thing, because we are like many countries in one, so it's kind of a sentiment. Obviously, we're European, we're Southern European, so well connected to the Mediterranean, also North Africa, but also our cultural links also in Latin America and in Hispanoamerica. So, you know, when I travel across, when I meet musicians from Mexico, from Peru, even Americans, North Americans, US citizens are from Latino background, we connect straight away. I don't know what it is, but we connect straight away. Probably you feel the same if you go to Australia or New Zealand or the countries, and you meet like people from Irish or Scottish background. So the cultural differences are there, but I think that unite us, especially in Europe. You know, it's like I go to Magyarország and I love it there, and I have many friends in Budapest, and same in Sweden. I mean, Europe is a melting pot that makes us very, very rich. Obviously, there is difficulties, and we'll talk about that, especially in touring, and especially now in the UK with the bloody Brexit. But it's for me, my opinion is it's a gift, all the cultural differences. So, very welcome.
Yeah, and we'll get into the difficulties around them soon as well. What are your thoughts on this?
You know, culture and identity and language is, I look at it look at us here in this room. We all have our roots. We all come from somewhere. Many times it's not only from, you know, one country. It's many times it's very mixed. That's our genetic line. But culture is also, how do we dress? That's culture. How do we smell? What perfume are we wearing? That's culture. How do we talk to each other? How do we behave? Are we open, or are we more closed? And what I find fascinating in also in the music industry is that I have met so many incredible people and so many amazing cultures. Through this industry, I had the chance, I mean, there's hardly any country left on this planet that I have not been to, or that I have not been invited to share my knowledge, or to give something back to those people that maybe have never been to that part of the world where I came from. And for me also, and I'm in the live sector, so festivals, it's my life. And in our lineups, there are so many artists from various countries, and on our festival site, there are at least 30 to 40% of our visitors come from another country. And I love to say that when I look at the festival, I look at that, for me a festival is a persona, because a festival has its own identity, because every festival has its name, has its team behind, and that's always very crucial, my dears, also within a band, on stage and behind the stage. The team, it's the family. Without these people, nothing is working. You know, I could be the best leader, director, whatsoever. It's a title. It's a title. It's responsibility, but it's a title. But I always wanted to be on the same, you know, eyesight with everybody. And when I look at the festival, and when we speak about culture and identity, the team behind the festival, that's, for me, that's the heartbeat. And the soul of a festival is everything, you know, that we are creating, the programs, the look and feel, everything around it. And but the love, the creation, what's happening on site, that is the culture mix of what artists we have on site and what audience we have with us on the festival. And there's a huge culture mix and the mix of identities. And for me, that is the best example how I love to live in the world today, especially I'm Hungarian, and maybe some of you witnessed that 2 weeks ago. We had, the earth was moving. So after 16 years, Hungarians finally stood up again for their right to vote. Young Hungarians. And many Hungarians left in the last at least 5 years. They moved abroad. They flew all back home to give their vote. And they wanted to give their vote in the country, not somewhere at any embassy, because anyway, sometimes different things happened in the past. The earth was moving, my dears. 2/3, 8 million Hungarians voted. And as I said before, I'm a proud European, and I can finally again say that I'm a proud Hungarian.
That was lovely, thank you. I'm going to turn to the question or the statement. I wish I'd known that. And I'm wondering, staying with you, if you see every year or you remember over the past, something going very badly wrong on your festival site because of some cultural misunderstanding. People just didn't know that things were done a certain way where your festivals are held.
I would put it, well, it was not a cultural misunderstanding. Actually, it was a cultural connection. And it was the year 2010, and between 2008 and 2014, I had the great privilege to be the artistic director and the program director of the Sziget Festival in Budapest, Hungary. And 2010, it's also a pretty big festival in Europe. Also, one of my dear old colleagues, Aniko Nagy, is also here. She will be also speaking later. But back in those years, 2010 was the year I will for sure not forget. I tried to make it short. I'm sure everybody knows this amazing multi-instrumentalist and artist, Prince. He's watching. And he was not, so he was very rarely on tour, especially in Europe. And 2010 was a year when he gave some very rare, but some gigs. And we managed to secure one gig at Siget, and we established a so-called 0 day only for Prince, only for him. And it was an amazing show. I could talk at least for 3.5 hours about how the process went, the pre-production, the production on site, preparing everything. It's maybe I write a book one day about that, because for also in my career, it was one of the most complex things I've ever done. But after the show, and in the contract we had it was only about 75 minutes, which was almost too short. At the end, he played more than 3 hours. It was again like this earth-moving experience. It was incredible. And next day, the touring party, a lot of trucks, thousands of people. I mean, not thousands, but it was a huge touring party. They were about to leave. And the normal festival was about to start with 60 venues, 300 artists per day, stuff like this. So everybody very tense and nervous. And I got a call from my colleague at the main stage that the Prince's tour manager would like to speak to me. So, yeah, but to say goodbye or something like this. And then he called me and we talked, and it was funny because he said, "Fruzsina, are you standing or sitting?" And I said, "Well, what shall I do? Shall I sit? Yeah, maybe." I sat down, and then he was saying, "Okay, so Prince liked it so much here that he would like to stay one more day because he would like to check out an artist that he's a big fan of." And that was, back in the days, it was, I'm a huge fan of Portuguese fado. And we had, it was a new stage that we established. It was called the Europe stage, where we featured emerging young European talent. And I've invited an artist called Ana Moura. Back in the days, she was still emerging. Nowadays, she's very big. But I think this is a beautiful example that Prince stayed one more day, and that we had to organize really everything around that. But he wanted to see this artist because he was a fan of her music. So, I mean, imagine Prince and Anna, and we could even arrange a meeting between them. I was there, I saw this, how Ana Moura met Prince. It was like, for her, I'm sure it was one of those moments that last for a lifetime. And I just love these cultural bridges that we can build between artists, between fans, between our guests. And that is the absolute unique power of music.
It's fascinating for me because in my head, I went straight to the problematic production issue with this potentially, where was he headlining?
Prince, of course he was. I mean, as I said, you can't imagine. I mean, it was one in my career, and as I said, next year it will be 30 years. I mean, I'm still 28, of course. Look at me. But in my career, and I've done, I think, a lot of shows, and I've read a lot of writers. But this production, that was heavy for the whole staff, for the whole team. So there were moments when some of my colleagues even said, "Fruzsina, we're not sure if we can all manage that." But, and again, the team, yes, we can. So let's find ways. There's always a way.
What I was concerned about was Prince running so over time that the festival got fined for breaking the terms of the...
No, because that's what I said at the beginning. We had to create a 0 day only for him.
Right.
So no other stage was playing. It was only the main stage. But the festival, we already had 50, 60,000 visitors on site. Everything was set, and we started the next day, really, with 60 venues. And Prince so we created a separate day for him.
He deserves it. I'll stay on stage for a moment, and or I guess my concerns about being on stages. And I was going to ask you what, maybe just in your line of work, what you remember about your first time of engaging with a new culture in your professional life. You've both, I guess we've all worked and lived in different countries and had to deal with other cultures and how that could go wrong. And I think very briefly for me was in 1990 or 1991, I jumped off a tour bus roof, not for fun. We were locked inside the bus, had to climb outside the roof and climb down to get the driver, the hotel key, whatever. Jumped off the bus, broke my ankle on the first day of the tour. I was assistant tour manager. And I was so terrified of the stories I'd heard, the cultural stories about American healthcare. I just think it'll be fine. I never got it fixed. And every winter time, my ankle is painful. So that was where I took somebody. I just heard about this cultural thing, and well, not cultural, political thing in America, where it was terrifying. They might charge me like $1 million, and I'll get my leg sewn on my elbow. I don't know. So when you were younger, back in the late 80s, for me, the early 90s, and you're a little bit younger, so think about your early experiences of these culture clashes or these kind of even
political. Well, the typical crossing the border at 5 a.m. from Amsterdam to Germany with a bag of weed. Long hair, rock and rollers, the police, boom, it smells funny here. Typical story, happened to everybody.
Yeah. But I'm going to try and keep things practical. So I've got a job, right? I just worked on my job out at Scraping to keep things practical, to find practical things to give you when these guys speak. So I took a note last night when I traveled through North America quite a lot, and we talked about drugs.
Going to America with no medical insurance is suicidal.
Sure, yeah.
So that's
but
it.
If you smoke weed, if you like cannabis, my notes say cannabis, I'm saying cannabis. Illinois, where it's legal, it borders Kentucky, Indiana, Iowa, and Wisconsin, where it's not legal. So you've got to be careful with these things. Klara, your time to talk for a while.
All right.
About just how you found being a transposed Swede in different cultures.
It's been really interesting because when I started working with Beggars and getting connected to all the different offices that we have around the world.
You're in Paris now, right?
I'm in Paris now. And they're very lovely. They're very French.
What is that? See, this is interesting. What did you have to change because they were very French? Why did you have to interface with these very French people?
No, it's just been really nice. They have work-life balance, which is quite cool. We go out for lunch pretty much every day, which is for me, a change from being in the London office where it was like a meal deal at my desk. So that's been really, really nice. But it's also really interesting getting these points of views. You know, you speak to the German office and you tell them some ideas, and they're very direct. They're like, no, that's not going to work. Don't like that. French would be a bit more passionate. You really see the different personalities that come from different cultures within this, and. Having worked with the Swedish artists recently, it's been really nice for me to get back a bit to the Swedish roots that I have and seeing that side of things, which has been cool. But you know, came into the office the other day and opened the door. Unlocked it. Being Swedish, I was the first one in. French one, a little bit later, and. There's just this man standing, and I screamed, because I didn't expect that there was going to be a man in our locked office. And it was an artist of ours who had lost his passport and couldn't get back to London. And I called my French boss. I was like, why didn't you tell me? He's like, but I sent you a text with his number. I was like, oh yeah, that's not preparation enough. But I had a chat with the guy. It was really nice. We managed to get him a temporary passport, and he got back to the UK a day later, which was really nice. And it's fun having these small little experiences because it's tiny things that go wrong, and most things are very solvable. It might just take a little bit of time, But it was nice having that, because a few weeks later, I got a panicked phone call from a friend of mine who works at a different label. It's like, I've got an artist, he's stuck in Paris, he's lost his passport, he's playing a release show in London tomorrow, what can we do, And, you know, I knew exactly what to do at that point. And you learn small things here and there, and things will go wrong. And, you know, you talk about this panel being a little bit chaotic. You just got to learn to roll with it a bit.
You mentioned food in France, which I want to speak about a little bit. When you toured in France, has anybody toured in France? Has anybody toured in France and not been given a 3-course meal? It's a mad thing. But a really interesting and really important thing to remember about, and I've done tours in France from like DIY venues to about maybe 3,000 capacity, and they're all the same where they have a dark stage. 7 p.m. and you're sound checking, the crew walk off, the crew leave the venue. Where are you going? Dark stage, we're getting dinner. Come and get dinner. We're sound checking, don't care, it's dinner time. And I've had that, again, tiny rooms all the way to bigger rooms where you sit with a 3-course meal. Maybe had a similar experience of touring. Have you come across that specific thing in France, where you've had to walk off stage? Or have you been on stage yourself and gone?
Well, I remember once that we booked Yo La Tengo, great band, I love them, in San Sebastian, La Public Theater. And, you know, the workers there, the public officers, you know, and they had the 2-hour lunch break. And Yo La Tengo, probably they have so many toys and little instruments, like all vintage and everything. So they are very like onto it, like they need to sound check for at least 3 or 4 hours. And the technical people from the theater just plug the thing off. And I was landing from Madrid and said, shall I go and say hello to the tour manager to double check everything is fine, or shall I go to the hotel? And then thank God that I went to the theater and double check. The tour manager says, thanks for coming here. I've been trying to call you, you're on the plane. I'm canceling. These guys are like, we cannot even sound check because they took bloody our lunch break. So, yeah, but I sorted out.
I'm going to keep it in live then, because I've got a related thing where, in my experience of touring in Spain and a little bit in Latin America and a little bit in Portugal, I found back in the early 2010s, like 10, 11, 12, 13, a lot of the Spanish venues had very, very prominent alcohol branding. And one time I took a band there and they had the branding on the stage. So these massive, posters, they were lit light boxes with the alcohol brand on it. And the band would not go on stage until they came off. And so we had 2 hours of arguing, respectfully debating with the booking agents and the promoter and the band, and that the band will just not go on stage if they are there. So cover them up or you haven't got a show. Yeah. But it was fascinating because I was supporting the band, but as a former venue owner and runner, this is what's keeping the lights on. You can play in the venue because there's alcohol branding here.
We had Morrissey, typical of him trying to cancel. You know, he cancels a lot because we were selling ham sandwiches in the venue, so we had to get rid of any meat. So take it or leave it. Yeah, obviously we stopped selling ham sandwiches.
Who was the artist?
Yeah, those funny things that happen in your career. Imagine cancelled by the ham.
Was that Morrissey? I didn't catch the name. Was it Morrissey who did that? It was Morrissey, aye. Interesting. I mean, you find another practical thing where you have to adjust to cultures as you travel through them. So if you begin a North American tour, say on the East Coast of America, and you can recycle a little bit there, you end up having a bus. If you care about recycling, you've got a bus full of recycling because you can't recycle in a lot of America. And you take the recycling all the way to California in the hope, and you come to a Whole Foods, and all you can do is throw it in the bin in Whole Foods and hope they recycle it. So there's things like that. If you deeply care about eating a specific diet, you may struggle in a different market. I think about one of my artists who's got IBS, he's got digestive issues, and he toured in China, and he really struggled. He wouldn't leave his hotel room. He was eating chips and burgers every night because he wasn't able to get, which wasn't doing him any good. But he was so intimidated by he just didn't know anything about. He's a very kind of homebody person, this guy, you know. Thinking about campaigns And because I'm working quite a lot with global campaigns and also trying to work in China and with China, how do you approach campaigns in terms of, do you thinking, this just isn't going to work in that market, we just feel like it won't, so we won't do it? How do you approach targeting certain markets? And bearing in mind, of course, that in many markets like Southeast Asia particularly, and China and even India and somewhere else now, Japan have got different social media platforms and different DSPs, different streaming platforms, which you're not going to get good results in Spotify because they don't use it in that market.
No, it's definitely something that we focused more and more on. When I came into Beggars, we were using a marketing agency, and since then we've taken all of the media buying in-house. And we work a lot with the international offices and have conversations every time we start a new campaign. And this is kind of what we're thinking centrally. This is the point of sale that we might have. This is the kind of, if it's a bigger event, bigger campaign, a bit, what kind of fan activations can we do? Can we do listening parties? The UK market talk a lot about in-stores that might not work as easily in other territories because it doesn't feed back to chart sales and things like that. Certain markets have more requirements. So Germany, if you're trying to get on the charts, it's very value-based, so you really want to have like an expensive vinyl, whilst the UK might push for a cheaper one because they will sell more. And it's a lot of those conversations, and it's really quite nice because we're investing more and more in the global reach. So I work really closely with the Southeast Asia team. We have 6 people out there based in Thailand, Taiwan, Korea, Thailand, Singapore, Philippines. We've also got a team in Japan and a girl who works in China as well. And, coming from the central office, it's very like, we need to have the pitchfork quotes on the ads, we need to have this. And you see that different things work differently in each market. We might have a big pre-order campaign in the UK, but they won't focus as much on sales, so we try and spend any budget that we have assigned on release date to push more DSPs. We try and work with local DSPs and find the information shared from these offices, and their insights is very, very useful, and we're seeing better results based on that.
I think about little tips like in Japan, it's still a very physical market. Lots of CDs are sold in Japan still. And I think about the old days of the UK's cultural influence, which is, for me personally, quite glad it's waning a bit. And back to the live arena for a moment, you all have got wonderful English. I don't suppose it was always that way. And I'm thinking back to when I had my club in London, and my native English-speaking staff, I think, were all entirely English. And I had to speak to them respectfully and say, see, when you're meeting people from different countries, like you got an Italian band coming in, you're talking to them like they're native and they're not, and you're giving them instructions about how the venue works. You're going to have to moderate just your diction, your vocabulary, your speed of delivery. And I think there's things that, as native speakers, we just go abroad, and it's the whole thing about, if you don't understand, just shout it, But you've all been, you weren't born speaking English or learning it straight away. So do you remember your first times working with people like me who come from an English-speaking country and going, what are they saying? I'm only catching half of the words. Or was it always, were you involved? Let me ask, I'll give you a direct question. Were you fluent already when you began working with native English-speaking artists?
Well, you learn on the go, So I remember my first settlement, very technical wording, invoicing, etc., with a tour manager was a bloody nightmare, But you learn from scratch those technical lingo, obviously. I have a friend that he used to do production. His English was basically based in contracts and settlements. Couldn't have like a football chat with anybody. It was just, invoice, that was, trusses, PAs.
Yeah, I could already speak English when I started working in the industry, but it's always in the beginning of my career. I was also managing bands, and I was also a tour manager. So I did the most beautiful moments are when we were in a country where the local people were not so fluent in English, for example. And then I also find myself, when you I mean, first you ask every kind of, I even also asked, do you speak maybe Hungarian? And there were some moments that people spoke Hungarian, like in Japan or even China or New Zealand was super crazy. But of course in New Zealand they speak great English. But when you find yourself, or especially in France, so actually I learned French because I felt it's better when I learn French. Okay, I also had a French boyfriend for a couple of years, which helped. And he didn't speak any other language than the language of love and French. If you know what I mean. But when we were in France, or when also nowadays when I have to deal with also French artists or French colleagues, I realize that it's better to switch to French than to try to speak slowly. Do you understand my English? And like, even if you speak slowly or loud, I mean, they won't understand. But the good thing is that we can use all our senses and also be doing, so sometimes I was also working only by gesture, and the stage manager was speaking in its language, I was speaking in whatever language I spoke, but it was sign language, and cable plug, whatever this instrument, it's like strange instrument. So you can make yourself understand.
Yeah, you've got a shared physical language of microphones and cables, and you can point.
Yeah,
which is useful.
Yeah, but also what Cesar was saying, this is also, I mean, every business has its own words or special terms. I mean, in our world, PA, like when I speak also to friends, or when they have nothing to do with the business, and and the PA and the monitors and the, oh, Fruzsina, can you please stop and make it understand, because we have no clue what.
But I had this trick because the writer was sending a fax, so you say, no, you see, you didn't ask for this. It was all like erased from that crazy paper, fax paper. It was not in the contract. Just joking.
I remember, please.
No. I find it having come from Sweden, where people are quite reserved in general. I think remembering that everyone is human, and when you're going to venues, like learning the polite little hellos, even if you don't speak their language, I feel like that makes a huge difference in France. And I find a lot of times, if I show how terrible my French is, they feel less self-conscious about their English. I think it's more of a self thing. And so I'll start with terrible French, and they'll be able to go, no, let me save you, So I think where you go, if you're touring, if you're meeting someone, even writing emails, because people write emails very differently. If you communicate with Japan, it's very formal, whilst finding more and more in the UK, it's less and less. But it's also, I think it's just getting people comfortable, and as you say, you can communicate really well just by being kind and nice. And
kindness. I mean, we can all be kind, or more kindness in this world. That helps.
Any booking agents in the room? Any booking agents? I can slag them off then. It's that thing about a culture within a culture. So kindness. What's up with booking agents? I've got form of very publicly attacking specifically male UK booking agents on Wide Days panels. So if you see Olaf, tell him I did it again. So rude, like one-word answers, just or not responding. No kindness, no respect for promoters. Couple of points to jump off from. The little things about learning little words here and there. If you've got an artist and they walk on stage in China and they can say a few words, people lose their minds. First of all, you went to China, which is a huge deal for the Chinese audience. And secondly, you took the time to learn a couple of words. And to go back to, I wish I'd known that. How many artists in the room here? Any artists? Yeah. When you walked into a venue for the first time, you didn't know how to sound check, or did you? Because nobody told you how to do it. Why don't we have, like, pre-doors open schools for young artists? I think they're coming, but I wouldn't mind that. We've got 14 minutes left, but I'm not going to ask you to ask a question now, but do you have any questions? Can I just see a hand if you've got a question lined up for us? Okay, maybe one question, two questions. We're going to get three. Can I see three? All right, you've got a century of experience here. In fact, over maybe 105 years here. I mean, just an experience. So, TMs.
Thank you.
We're all 28.
We are collectively.
Dinosaurs. Except you, my dear.
There's also fun. There's fun in not knowing. I find my last anecdote before I turn to questions and final thoughts, like I've got any final thoughts written down here, is I've got an artist he's from Wales. 3 biggest markets are Indonesia, the US, and the UK. In cities, it's Jakarta, London, and Salt Lake City. And we understand Indonesia, Jakarta, for a reason I won't bore you with. Maybe I could just tell you because it's quite important. It's the idea of, if you're a UK artist, once you get beyond the main kind of, let's just say the main Western democracies, you'll become a little bit unusual, a little bit exotic to some people. So you might want to think about that to be the first, like, why not make an all-out attempt at breaking Slovakia? Have you been to Slovakia? It's stunning. There are 5 million people there, and my God, the gelato, because it's close to Italy. So think about that. Jakarta, so Salt Lake City. I'm like Billy Connolly with the tangents. We can sell 3,000 tickets in Salt Lake City in Utah, and 3,000 Jakarta, 3,000 London, and we've no idea why in Salt Lake City. And I always go to the front of the venue before doors open and talk to the fans. How you doing? I'm the manager. Just wondering why you're here, because it's interesting to learn. And they say things like, well, we've got the mountains here, and we take our music to the mountains, and we all gather together, and it really soundtracks our summertime. And I'm thinking, there's mountains in Slovakia too, and we're not big in Slovakia. So we've no idea why we're big in Salt Lake City or Utah. As a manager, I think I'm supposed to know. I'm meant to try and find the data point and leverage the data point. But if I do that, I can't nap or paddleboard as much. And so I'm going to turn to you finally, Klara, for a final thought about the things that are interesting around markets. Like, to what extent do you just have to go, we don't really know why it worked in the market, it just did, and we're gonna run with it and pretend that we knew all along?
I think it happens quite a lot. I think, you try and focus, and spoke to a colleague earlier about, if there was a quick, formula, everyone would be doing it. There's no like this. If you do marketing this way, you're going to be successful. If you do this kind of press, you're going to be successful. You got to try. You got to start feeling out, and as soon as you see some kind of like, oh, we're seeing a lot of figures in France, maybe focus on a France tour. If you do go to France, don't only focus on Paris. Go to the rest of the country. And sometimes it's just very, very random. When with the rise of social media and TikTok and the way that music is consumed and the sounds, you can, we got an artist that got really big in Brazil because it was used on, I think it was a SpongeBob meme. And then you see like a huge amount of streams for Brazil, and you're like, okay, is this something that we should worth investing in? Do we need to connect this artist with SpongeBob? There's no right or wrong. It's figuring out where your music connects. And sometimes you can plan it, sometimes it's just.
Yeah. I like that people like you and me are up here and we've got all the experience and we just don't know. Like, I'm just a manager, but my sector likes to pretend that we, would take, that we knew that would happen. It's the whole illusion of control and narrative fallacy thing. Right, we're doing the questions. We've got a question here. Question, yes, let's go with it. Have you got a microphone for a question, please, Eric? No bother. We'll just all look at you. I won't even bother trying to fill the time. And you three guys can think about the final point, which is think about the beauty of cultural differences. And I'm going to ask Cesar to bring in Brexit at that point. Down the front here. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your inputs and for the chats. So we quite often, with our group, play outside of the UK, and we see quite a lot of interest in us because we have a kind of Scottish twist to what we do. I wonder if you guys have any advice or any insight into how important it is to have a team in the different territories. Because we found that although people could listen to the music and enjoy the music and we get some requests, it's quite hard to stay like on the ground in a certain place and understand it. Do you guys have any insight into how important it is to have a team in different places or methods to gain one?
Totally. I mean, yesterday I had some speed meetings with some artists here. Yeah. My first advice is like patience and invest in PR. Try to find connections. That's why we do these music conferences around the world, to just have connections. It's not only about getting booked. For me, it's even more important to find a good PR person or a PR agency that develop your profile in the country that you have some listeners, and build it before you go there and play. Obviously, the word of mouth and playing is super essential. In Spain, it's super essential. Like, I saw, so many bands like Fountains DC growing like from 200 people to 20,000 just because of the word of mouth, and also, the artist team work. But for like someone like probably you, the more emerging, invest, probably it's the best 500 euros that you invest in, trying to find someone to get you interviews, radio plays, etc., etc. It's super important. Especially because there is so much competition. The media have so many, people knocking on the doors, listen to this, listen to that. But if you have some data, okay, you already play in Spain or in France, whatever, I sold out 50 or 200 tickets, get some press. If you go there, just go for, it's not only playing, go there and do some interview and media.
Which country is it?
Which country?
Which country?
For us, France is a big country as well. Yeah, that would be kind of something that we're focused on at the moment.
Klara lives in France.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, ça va? I think for France, it's really quite good to get, as you're saying, Cesar, a local radio plugger, a local press team, working with local promoters, maybe playing more boutique festivals rather than like aiming for the big ones. Get on smaller radio stations. Just seeing the press is pretty much like a few like France Inter, what's they called? Listen Rock. There's a few specific press teams, and it's for them. It's so much about connections.
Mm-hmm.
So having someone local would be very, very beneficial for you.
Cool.
It's a company called Pockets, pockets.world. Grab me, I'll tell you about it later, but they specifically find people in the market you want to go to who understand that market and work with you to try and build your pockets of fans.
Awesome.
Question at the back, if I remember. You had your hand up there. Eric, would you mind passing that microphone to the gentleman in the back with his hand up?
guys.
Hi.
It's kind of a good follow-up question from Tom's down the front. It's around numbers, I guess, and like what you feel, you guys, it's a good, like, because we have numbers in the UK, but then it's like outside territories, there's the beginnings of numbers there, and I'm wondering, with your expertise, what's like a certain metric that you think, oh, this is worth investing in, this is worth actually going out to this country and trying to tour there, trying to get some gigs there, investing money into PR and that sort of thing?
I'll give you an answer before I pass to the panel, but your gut. Like, how old are you?
28,
You'll
weirdly enough.
You'll be dead in about 55 years. So roughly, I mean, things go well. I'll be dead in 30. So what's also for me going to have to be factored in is what you want to do. What's your gut telling you? Where do you fancy going? What food do you want to try? And it's not the answer that people like me are meant to be giving, but I think it's important to have fun when you're doing this. And bear in mind, there's a brilliant data came out in New York in the 90s which showed that taxi drivers had no better or worse chance at predicting the stock market than stock analysts did. We're all just telling the story backwards. Oh, here's why it didn't work, or here's why it worked. I don't know is my answer. I have no idea. And if you do something that works, you can say, oh, yeah, that's how we did it. Oh, I'll copy that then. But it won't work for somebody else. So it's kind of a useless answer. I can't give you one, but I do like to give my life over to just the wonderful thing about the fact we live in one direction is we can never know what could have happened. So what do you all feel like doing? Anything more practical than that from the panel? Looking at Klara.
No, I think you're very right. I was trying to Sven, who heads up the German office, kind of get his insights on all of this, and he was saying as well, it's just like, when you're starting out a band and you're trying to break a market, it's really hard to gauge. You might you play a venue and there's 20 people in the crowd, but they are loving it, and then you come back 6 months later, there's 120, 180, and it's a bit of a trial and error. You never really know. Music is so personal. We connect with certain artists really, really well. We can really appreciate all music, but certain artists hit closer to home, and I can't say why that song makes me cry specifically, or that one is always hyping me up, but it's what you connect with. So I think going with your gut is the right answer, and it's maybe not the one you want, but it's trial and error, and having fun. Because if people see you having fun on stage, if you work with people in different venues, and you chat to someone after the show who might be able to get you shows in France, who you meet people at the most random of places as well. So keeping playing is the best way to grow.
50 seconds each on the beauty of the cultural differences that we share and how they're not problems after all, they're just beautiful things.
The beauty is that culture differences makes us stronger, because we learn from each other, and we learn from these differences, and we can turn them around, and they can become something very valuable and positive for us. And what I also feel, and maybe this is like also like a thought for all of you out there, but I feel that we as music professionals, we are, and it doesn't matter if we are on stage or behind the stage, and keep that thought, my dears, and swallow it and chew it a little bit. We are all architects of dreams.
Lovely. Like that.
Yeah, I say that. And on top of that, also, like, the cultural differences give us more opportunities for more business. Because in my experience, what works in one country might not work in a different country. For example, I manage this super cool jazz flamenco duo that's doing great in Eastern Europe, better than in Spain. Why? Because Eastern Europe have an incredible jazz culture. Same in Asia. Greece, the Mediterranean, all more folky, rootsy music is really big there. So it's like open doors for artists that maybe, play more Celtic music or more folk music that might not be hype anymore I don't like to use, for me super cool, but you know what I mean, might not be so popular anymore in the UK or in Germany, etc., and then you play, even country music, it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's importing from the US. So it's like what I mean. The cultural differences open doors for more business and more opportunities for different types of artists. And I also want to stress out that it's not only Europe. I mean, we have music, incredible music coming from Middle East, from Africa. I go to many music conferences in Africa. There is one in Rabat in Morocco called Visa for Music. That incredible musicians in Africa. I'm not talking only about traditional African music, but super modern. So this techno DJ from Uganda, there's like, if he had a UK agent, he will be like a superstar. It's like, so those cultural differences makes us really rich, makes us to have more opportunities for touring. We really need to make Europe like a big touring market and recording market, to make Europe like the US. That will be also very healthy for the artists, that they don't want to be superstars. We need to make Europe like the US. I have many friends in the US that they play rhythm and blues, country and western, and jazz or blues or whatever, and they make a living off their music without being superstars. It's like, the bigger the market, more opportunities for everybody, and not being Dua Lipa's. With all my respect, I love Dua Lipa, but you know what I mean. It's like,
I love her. She's great.
Yeah.
Eric, I owe you 2 minutes. Really sorry. Thanks very much. Fuck Brexit.